Welcome. So today we're going to dive into a concept that completely flips the script on manifestation. And if you've ever felt like you're just pushing a giant boulder uphill, trying to force your dreams into reality, well, this one's for you.
I mean, seriously, does it ever feel like you're in this constant struggle? Almost like you're trying to arm wrestle the universe into giving you what you want? You're pouring in all this effort, all this energy, and yet it just feels like something isn't quite clicking into place.
And it becomes this exhausting cycle, right? You've got the vision boards, you're doing the daily affirmations, you're putting everything into those intense visualization sessions. We've all been taught that this kind of transformation has to be earned, that it has to be a struggle. But what if that struggle is the very thing that's holding you back?
So let's talk about this old way of doing things first, this paradigm of striving. This is the whole idea that we have to push and prove ourselves and basically force our desires into existence.
Think of someone, let's call her Dorothy. For years, she was the model student. She had vision boards plastered everywhere, she never missed a day of affirmations, but her dreams just stayed stubbornly out of reach. See, this whole approach is built on the idea that we are separate from what we want, and that it's our job to work super hard to close that gap.
But here's where everything changes. What if that entire premise, the idea of creating your reality, is actually flawed? What if you don't have to create anything new at all?
And this brings us to the quantum field. Just try to picture it. It's like this infinite, boundless ocean of pure potential. And in this ocean, every single possible reality you can imagine already exists, all at the same time. The life you want, that job, the amazing health, it's all there right now as a fully formed possibility.
This right here is the game changer. You're not a radio tower desperately trying to broadcast a new song out of thin air. No, you're a receiver. Your only job is to tune your dial to the frequency of the reality you want to experience, because that song is already played.
And this is exactly what happened with Dorothy. One day, she just stopped. She stopped all the pushing, all the striving, and she just observed. And in that quiet moment of pure awareness, it hit her. The promotion, the relationship, the vitality she wanted, it already existed. And the second she let go of that tight grip, her whole life transformed almost effortlessly. She wasn't creating it, she was just finally noticing what was already there.
Okay, so this is the million-dollar question, right? How do we actually do this? How do we stop trying to build the radio from scratch and just learn how to tune the dial? Well, it all comes down to a really subtle but powerful shift from a state of hoping to a state of knowing.
Just feel the difference in the energy here. Hoping is always a wish for something in the future, which basically says, I don't have it now. But assuming is a recognition of the present. Think about the story of a merchant named Chester. He spent years hoping for customers. Then he started watching the really wealthy traders. They didn't hope. They just assumed success was their natural state. The moment Chester shifted to assuming customers were already on their way, his entire business turned around.
We can actually break this down into 3 pretty simple steps. First, you have to feel the reality of your desire right now, not as some future fantasy, but as a present moment fact. Second, you just observe this reality into being, exactly like Dorothy did. And third, and this is probably the hardest part, you have to completely let go of how it's going to happen. Your job is just to hold the frequency, not to micromanage the universe.
What this all really boils down to is a massive shift in how we approach our lives. We're moving from creating to simply recognizing, from striving to allowing. We stop trying to become worthy and just accept that we already are. And we move from trying to control everything to just trusting the process. It's a total and complete release of effort.
Now, this all sounds wonderful, I know, but what about when things get hard? What about when we feel that resistance bubble up? Well, this next part is going to reframe how you see resistance in a really powerful way.
So, let's talk about Mildred, a potter. She used to literally fight with the clay on her wheel, trying to force it into shapes it just didn't want to make. And of course, the harder she pushed, the more the clay resisted, and her pots would come out all lopsided and weak. Does that sound, at all familiar?
But what if resistance isn't the obstacle we think it is? What if it's actually an ally that we've just misunderstood? When Mildred finally stopped fighting the clay and started to work with its nature, she realized its stubbornness was the very thing that allowed it to hold these beautiful, strong forms. The resistance itself held the key to the breakthrough.
So how do we start to live like this? Well, first, we start to embrace uncertainty, not as something scary, but as this creative space where anything can happen. Then we learn to feel the difference in our actions. Aligned action just feels light, energizing. Ego-driven action feels heavy, like a chore. And then we can finally release that identity of being a seeker, because you've already arrived. And from there, you can start finding the magic that's already waiting for you in the most ordinary moments.
And you know, all of this leads to the ultimate realization, really the heart of this entire idea. You are not some separate little person trying to manipulate an external force called the quantum field. You are the field. When you take a breath, it's the universe breathing through you. You are literally the creative force of the cosmos getting to know itself through your unique experience.
So you see, the big shift you're looking for isn't some dramatic event waiting for you down the road. It's already happened. It's not an event. It's a continuous, moment-by-moment recognition of this vast, whole and complete awareness that you have always been. The journey isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've been all along.
And that brings us to the one last question I want to leave you with. Instead of always asking, how do I get what I want? Try asking this instead. Who would I be if this were already my reality? Just feel yourself dissolve into that state of being. Because in the quantum world, you don't need to figure out the path. You just need to become the destination.